Hello, everybody. Hello to my family on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and TikTok. I'm going to try to look on here on Instagram also and go live if I can. So if you just give me a couple of minutes. Okay, give me one more second. I'm going to have to go to my other page. And then we will get started. I normally go live in my Zoom, in my private Facebook group, Executive Longevity Collective, but I'm not doing that today. This is the last week of the Executive Longevity Lab. So the last week for this cohort for the Executive Longevity Live experience. We will resume again after Labor Day. So be on the lookout for those announcements. But please join the group. If you are following along on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, the link for the Executive Longevity Community on Facebook is located there. If not, just go to your Facebook groups and type in Executive Longevity Community, and you will find a beautiful picture of moi with some lavender and pink flowers, and click the link to join, and you can get implementation tools, reflection prompts, and a community of leaders and high performers that are building their lives piece by piece, creating their own strategic longevity plan. So what I'm going to do today is go over what we've been talking about the last 5 weeks and what we will end the week on. So there won't be a live next Sunday. There won't be another live until after Labor Day when I announce the second cohort to the Executive Longevity Lab. So be on the lookout for that. And okay, so I am live everywhere now. Okay, so great. So you should be able to see me on my on Facebook at Sherry Austin, on TikTok on LinkedIn, and here on TikTok. So, like I said, I was bringing together the Strategic Longevity Plan, which is a personalized framework about protecting your executive capacity, decision quality, and long-term leadership performance. So, let's start with week one. So, week one was about sleep and your recovery infrastructure. And when I tell you I swear by this, I swear by this. Sleep is not lost productivity. It is neurological restoration. It is foundational for you to, I'm going to move this camera over here. Yeah, I got 3 cameras set up. Okay, so it is foundational for your recovery infrastructure. And so we went along with that in the infrastructure because we have to realize that during sleep, our brain consolidates memory, regulates emotion, clears metabolic waste, and restores executive function. So poor sleep can affect our judgment before we consciously recognize it, that our performance is starting to decline. And unfortunately, a lot of times we don't realize it until the loud, visible signs of decision quality decline shows up. And a lot of times that shows up what people know as burnout, what the young people say is crashing out. But that's when those declines are visible and out loud for everyone to see. And that's why we focus on that for week one. So an executive question for week one is, am I making decisions from a restored brain or a depleted one? A lot of times we're so engrossed in this hustle culture, we are actually making decisions from a depleted brain, and we are not realizing that that's what we're doing. So We're going along with normal life, and we have to remember that the brain automatically defers to what's familiar. So we defer to the familiar thing. And sometimes the familiar thing is not the best thing. The familiar pattern sometimes is what gets us caught up in toxic work relationships, toxic intimate relationships, toxic familial relationships, because we're deferring to what's familiar. Even though it's not good, it's familiar. And because our brains are tired and we're not thinking well, it's easier to deal with that than to sit in, or we don't have the, actually, we just don't have the bandwidth for strategic clarity, for ambiguity. So that is the problem, because our brains are cognitively overloaded. Protecting sleep is protecting decision quality. So that's the takeaway that I want you to get away with week one. And that's why sleep and your recovery infrastructure is so foundational. And if you follow me on all different platforms and on my podcast, which will be released, I have an episode come out every Sunday around 5 p.m. You'll hear me talk about the importance of recovery infrastructure. I live by that. That is one of my non-negotiables for my life. Stress patterns, overcommitment, emotional triggers, and lack of boundaries all consume cognitive bandwidth. Like I said earlier, the second week we talked about insight, because you cannot manage what you're not aware of. So, are you aware that you're operating in chronic depletion? Are you aware that you are a chronic insomniac? And you may get some sleep. Most people think insomnia is the lack of sleep or just getting little cat naps. But anytime you are consistently getting less than 7 hours of sleep at night, that is considered chronic insomnia, because we need those sleep cycles in order for not just for repair of the brain, but for cellular repair of the body. So without having the cellular repair of the body and of the brain, we don't have memory consolidation. We're constantly anxious. It leads to depression. It leads to, like I said, familiar thoughts. So we're already cognitively overloaded. So we're not operating at our full capacity. And operating at 60 to 70% is not good enough. That's like getting your check and you get $1,000 a week, but now you're being told that you're only going to get $600 a week and you need to pay your bills on that. Is that sufficient? Probably not. Well, that's what we're doing to our brains. We're trying to get $1,000 worth of things on $600 worth of capacity and wondering why we're crashing out or we're burning out. And that's why. So with insight, like I said, what you're not aware of, you cannot manage. And I'm not saying letting your calendar manage you, because I do know some executives who their calendar manages them. They have no autonomy over their calendar, possibly because of either organizational constraints or the fact that they have an administrative assistant that handles their calendar. So they may not be aware of certain key strategic things that needs to be taking place. So an executive question would be, what patterns repeatedly reduce your clarity, focus, or presence? Okay, I was looking to see if there's any questions. There's no questions. So I'm just going to speak from personal experience. Currently, what is repeatedly reducing my clarity is that I'm in an emotionally trying time in my personal relationship. And because of that, there are a lot of boundaries that weren't instituted that are now being instituted. And because I'm restructuring the situation, it can sometimes become a little stressful. So I'm currently coming up with systems in order to reduce that. One of those things is being clear on what my boundaries are, maintaining my focus on what's going to move the needle next, and preserving my peace and moving my business along, or what's going to improve my health, what's going to allow me to excel in school. I maintain my focus there. And of course, when I get upset, you want to escape. And because I'm a spiritual bypasser by nature, I would constantly, because I used to be of the school of thought, because when we first heard about The Secret and those things, we were told, don't think bad thoughts, you want to always think positive thoughts, be positive, 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 so positive things can come to you. But no one really talked about how to sit in your feelings and feel them. And I don't mean ruminate and go over it day after day after day after day, but I mean just sit in it for a moment and just pause and ask yourself, why am I feeling this way? What triggered this? Am I being rewounded some kind of way? Is this exposing a trauma that I buried? We're not asking those questions. So I learned to spiritually bypass. Oh, I don't want to feel that. I don't want to block my manifestation. So I'm just going to go ahead and just think positive thoughts. And there is a fine line between reality and operating in Delulu. And even if you're operating in Delulu, you still have to have faith-inspired action to go along with that. And I didn't have the faith-inspired action to go along with that. And I just kept thinking that if I spiritually bypassed, that my problems would eventually go away, and they did not. So now what I do is I stay rooted in the present. It would be nice to just be like, I want all of this to go away. I want $1 million. I want a house on the beach. Bingo, and it comes. But no, I have to figure out, why am I feeling this way? What's triggering this? What wound is this exposing? How do I need to go about to heal that so I can be a better steward of my personal life and my finances? So that's the insight that we talked about for week 2. Why are you not getting enough sleep? Why are you not eating in a way that fuels your body? Why are you not moving in a way that is health promoting and disease alleviating to your body? Why are you not doing the things that's going to increase your executive and your cognitive capacity? You cannot strategically change what you have not honestly identified. And that's where the spiritual bypassing got me, because I was not honestly identifying anything. I didn't want to look in the mirror. I didn't want to sit in grief. Over the last few weeks, I sat in grief and I cried every day. And I always thought that tears and vulnerability was a sign of weakness. Even in my personal life, I wasn't going to cry. And this time I let the tears flow because I realized it was cleansing and is what I needed. So I did that. And I got real honest with myself about patterns in my life that I keep accepting, that I keep allowing. I was operating in survival mode for years, and it showed up in my finances until that became a burnout, until my personal life became a burnout. The only thing, thank God, that has actually survived and thrived in all of my survival mode was my health. My health has been better today than it was 6 years ago. So I do thank God for that, and I focus on that. So like I said, we don't want to ruminate in the negativity or the challenges, but we do want to identify what they are, identify what our roadblocks are, in business terms, what our bottlenecks are. And then we do want to make a plan to mitigate that challenge or that bottleneck or that roadblock. So then week 3, we concentrate on growth. So now we have our foundation down. Now we know why we do what we do, what's blocking that, and what we need to do next. Now, how do we grow that? Growth requires adaptation, not constant pressure. Resilience is the ability to experience stress, recover, and return with capacity intact. And that is what resilience is, and that is what I have been relying on. Now, I've always been a resilient person. I mean, I may have been a spiritual bypasser, but I'm resilient. My motto used to be, I'm a thug it out. But now that I have retired the hustle culture and I'm all about living in my energy flow, soft life, you can still be resilient and still living your soft life era. A growth mindset includes learning from mistakes without turning them into evidence of personal failure. That was something that I had to deal with myself, because the old version of me, I was judging the old version of me. Like, how could I have allowed this to happen? How did I get here? How did this happen? And then I realized that that old version of me, that survival mode person in me, that was the survival mode. That was the wounded Sherry. That was my shadow self that I needed to integrate. So now I am in the process of reparenting myself. And in the Bible it says, "Ask and it shall be given. Knock and the door will be open to you." Well, every year I have three key words. So this year my words were clarity, peace, and boundaries. And baby, when I say I asked and God answered, mm, He allowed situations to occur that forced me to have clarity. Situations that forced me to institute non-negotiable boundaries that, in essence, protected my peace. So we got to remember. I remember somebody said, "I asked God for patience." And then he sent all these things to try my patience. I'm not asking for no more gifts of the spirit. And that's how I felt. But then in the next instant, I realized that's what was growing me. That's what was getting me out of survivalhood into stewardship. Sustainable leaders build recovery into performance instead of waiting until burnout forces it. I'm going to raise my hand because I am that leader that was at the brink of burnout. Now I'm building my sustainable leadership with my non negotiable recovery infrastructure. So I have a question for you guys. Am I using challenge to expand my capacity or allowing it to chronically exhaust me? Okay. Um, I'm looking at three screens. So if you see me looking around, that's what it is. I'm looking at three screens. Like I was saying earlier with resilience, and I was asking God for the clarity, the boundaries, and the peace, I had to rise up to the challenge. So I expanded. So I just want you to ask yourself, because before I was allowing challenges to chronically exhaust me. I wanted to crawl under the bed, put a pillow over my head, and wait for the next day. But it wasn't growing me. And that's not part of having a growth mindset. Part of having a growth mindset, I'm just, hi, TikTok people. If I'm not responding to your questions right away, please join me in the executive longevity community where you can ask your questions and I'll be glad to answer them. I'm going to only answer the questions that I'm asking at this point. But if you have any other questions, just drop them. Just join the group. It's free. And then you put your questions in there and I'll answer them in there. So the question was, am I using challenge to expand my capacity or allowing it to chronically exhaust me? And you have to ask yourself, you have a growth mindset. So for all of my high performers, most of you and executives and senior leaders and CEOs, you are operating in a growth mindset. So 9 times out of 10, you're rising to the challenge and allowing it to expand your capacity. But there is a way that we can do it where it does not have to exhaust us. We don't have to get to the finish line with full of efforting and force. We can get there in flow. And part of that flow, that's sustainability to me. Arriving there with increased capacity without efforting, without force. Growth happens through the rhythm of challenge, recovery, reflection, and adjustment. So that's that long story I told you earlier about what I'm currently going through. I went through the challenges. I instituted recovery infrastructure immediately, and I'm using it a lot. I reflect on what the trigger was, and then I decided what would be the adjustment. Is it a response, no response, firmer boundary, softer boundary? But I am allowing myself to grow my capacity. And as we do that, also, we are also decreasing our cognitive load. And I want you to realize that. So, for cognitive load, if you don't know, basically you're decreasing your stress load. Week 4, we got into nutrition. The brain requires consistent nourishment and metabolic stability. Blood sugar swings, dehydration, underfueling, and highly inflammatory eating patterns can affect energy, mood, attention, and decision making. Nutrition does not have to be perfect. It needs to be reliably supported. It needs to reliably support the demands placed on the body and the brain. Now, for my menopausal, perimenopausal, and menopausal women, and my andropause men. And for men who don't know what andropause is, for my people out there that don't know what andropause is, it is the male version of menopause. Basically, you're having hormonal decline in your body. So you're not going crazy. It's just that our body, as we age, our body is releasing hormones, and that's where we start getting the mom and dad bods, and the little midsection, the fupa for women, and the persistent weight gain. Although all the things you did in your 20s and 30s, the intermittent fasting, the HIIT exercises, the cardio for days, although all of those things might have been effective then and they're not effective now, and you don't know why, that back then you could just drop your calories down to 800 and drop off 10 pounds, and now you drop your calories to 800 a day and you've gained 15. That's why. It's the hormonal imbalance. So first of all, we need to understand that our brain runs on glucose. So when we're super or significantly calorically restrictive, that's where the brain fog comes in from. That and lack of sleep. So that's when our cortisol levels go up. That's when the ghrelin hormone, your hunger hormone, goes up, because basically it's trying to do anything to get your attention, to get some type of glucose, to get some type of nutrients inside of your body. And I've realized on my menopause journey that that's not the flex. So the flex is now to monitor my macros, to make sure that every meal is 30 grams plus protein per meal. And if I have to incorporate snacks. For my women especially, you need 1.5, anywhere from 1.25 to 2 grams per kilogram of weight of protein a day. And go by your goal weight, because if you are obese, morbidly obese, you don't want to go by that weight scale. But say your goal weight is 180 pounds, then you need at minimum 100 and I think it's 150 grams of protein a day, something along those lines. But you can do the math. Like I said, it's 1.25 to 2 grams per kilogram. And if you don't know what you weigh in kilograms, just take how much weight you are, say you're 200 pounds, divided by 2.2, and that'll tell you how many kilograms of weight you are. And that's how many grams of protein that you need per day. And you don't want to dump everything into one meal, because our bodies can't adequately metabolize more than 40 grams of protein per hour. So you just want to take that into consideration also, and make sure that you're getting those macros in order to increase satiety, which means fullness. In addition to protein, you want to get in 25 to 35 grams of fiber per day. And you can get that from your leafy greens, fresh fruits, legumes, nuts, and good whole grains. So that's just something, that's an adequate way to fuel your body without yo-yo dieting, without severely restricting yourself. And you'll realize that when you're eating nutritionally sound, that you have more cognitive capacity, more brain capacity, in order to do the things that you need to do. You're not going to be having constant mood swings. Um, you're not going to be having afternoon crashes. You're not going to be having brain fog because with stable protein and fiber, your glucose is stable also. And then dehydration. I live in Florida. It's hot pretty much year round, and especially in the summertime. It is extremely hot. It is imperative that you get in, they say 64 ounces of water a day. That's barely cutting it. I mean, first of all, we're 80% water. So we need water for our blood, for nutrients in our blood to get all the way around our body and through the system. So that's not adequate. So the goal, I'm trying to think, what is the water requirement goal? I know for me, I just did a gallon a day, but I want to say if you're 100 kilograms, you should be getting in, yeah, I think it's 1 ounce per kilogram of body weight. So if you're 100 kilograms, you should be getting in 100 ounces, which is a little over 3 liters of water a day, something to that effect. So 64 ounces of water is for somebody who's 64 kilos, and they're probably like 120, 128 pounds. So a lot of people are more than that. So you want to get in more water per day than the required 8 ounce glasses of water, because dehydration, and a lot of people don't realize that by the time you feel thirsty, you're dehydrated. So that's why I make it a habit to just sip water every hour. Anybody that knows me knows I walk around with a gallon jug of water everywhere I go. I'm constantly sipping water. Matter of fact, I'm going to sip some now because I did a cognitive reset before I came on this live, and it was very hot outside. And normally, I do not recommend going outside in the hot Florida sun. I'm kind of glad I did, because now that I'm looking outside my window, it's about to rain. And I did get a majority of my steps in, but mostly I went on a walk to reset, for a nervous system reset. That's one of the cognitive resets that I do talk about. That's part of your recovery infrastructure, is walking. And we'll talk about a little bit more of that in a minute when I move into movement. But yeah, a lot of times if I'm feeling stressed, for me, and there's different things that you can do. You can institute white space, where you turn off radios, TVs, podcasts, don't talk to anybody, and just sit in silence for 15 minutes, eyes open or eyes closed. You can have your eyes softly open, looking at a bare plain white wall. You can close your eyes. For me, I like to close my eyes, lay under the fan, because the coolness decreases my body temperature and calms me down quicker. And sometimes I sit on my massage chair. A lot of times I go for walks, physically discharging energy out of my body, especially when that energy is dysregulating my nervous system, is very beneficial for me. And that's considered a cognitive reset. So I did that before I came on. So I am a little bit thirstier than usual. Inflammatory eating patterns. I mean, I don't have to explain that. That's obviously your junk food eating, you're eating on the go, not being mindful of what you're putting in your mouth. All of that increases your cortisol. When your cortisol level goes up, your liver releases more glucose into your body system. You have extra sugar running around in your blood. That causes increased blood sugar, blah, 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 blah. That's usually the catalyst for type 2 diabetes. So that's just the quick and skinny on that. So and diabetes is also a chronic modifiable lifestyle illness. So it can definitely lead to that. And any inflammation in the body tears down every major organ body system: your brain, your heart, your lungs, your kidney, your liver, your abdomen, your tissues, your muscles, your bones, everything. So do not recommend inflammatory eating, inflammatory diets. None of that is going to be healthy for you in the long run. And the goal here is longevity. Nutrition doesn't have to be perfect, like I said before. It just needs to reliably support the demands placed on your body and the brain. So here's a question that I'm going to ask. Does the way I eat support sustained cognition or create preventable peaks and crashes? And I'm just going to stop for a minute. Let me just say hey to all my people on Instagram. Hi, James. Hi, Pure Fashionality. On TikTok. Hi, Chusa. Hi, Allie. So, okay. Just saying hi to a few people on here. So, again, the question was, does the way I eat support sustained cognition or create preventable peaks and crashes? So, like I said, if you're eating protein forward meals, if you're getting plenty of fiber, if you're eating whole grains, fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, if you're shopping the lean proteins, then yes, you're eating in a way that supports sustained cognition. That's brain function. But if you're not and you're getting up in the morning, and I used to be an intermittent fasting girly, and I do think there is some benefits to intermittent fasting or fasting as a whole, because fasting as a whole, uh, it increases autophagy in the body. Now, autophagy is something that occurs at sleep. So that's another important reason why you need to get 7 to 9 hours of sleep, because that's a long enough period for the cellular cleanup, which your body is doing, which is also autophagy, is clearing out the bad cells in the body. It's doing that also. So if you're not eating, if you're stop eating 2 to 3 hours before bed and then you're sleeping for 7 to 9 hours, you don't really need to intermittent fasting, because that period of time, that 12 hours, actually, if you think about it, 3 hours before, 7 to 9 hours of sleep is anywhere from 10 to 12 hours. You have autophagy going on during that entire time. So then you don't need to get up to further intermittent fast. So that's just my spiel on that. But yeah, because of the cellular benefits in the body, that is why I used to intermittent fast. And of course, obviously, there's some calorie restriction to it, because in my eating windows, I ate very nutritionally clean. So there's that. So if you have sustained nutrition, you're not going to have the 3 p.m. crashes. Food is not merely fuel for the body, it is information for the brain. That is something to think about. The food sends signals, it's information for the brain. And it tells the brain, that's why certain hormones will react and you will get thirsty all of a sudden, or you will crave chocolate because you might need more magnesium in your body, or you will crave something salty because maybe you're dehydrated, or you will crave sugar, or you have a headache because you probably need to eat almonds. The body, it sends information out, and then you can use that food to answer the question. Week 5 was about movement. That's what this week was about. And movement supports circulation, brain health, stress regulation, metabolic function, and cognitive flexibility. It does not require hours in the gym. I can testify to that, because I have been on gym hiatus intermittently since the end of last year, because I really injured my shoulder. Then on top of the injury, it was also frozen from menopause, from lack of hormones in the cartilage and tendons. So I was on intermittent gym rest on and off for the last almost year, honestly. So it doesn't require hours in the gym. Walking meetings, I recommend. Brief movement breaks, definitely recommend. Strength training for my perimenopausal, menopausal, postmenopausal, and my androgenepausal men. Please strength train and lift weights. We lose muscle mass 3 to 8% every year. So you may be normal weight, but your muscles are atrophying. They now have research out where they're using the thigh muscle as indicators of longevity on mobility. So if you're not using those muscles, you're not building them up, they're going to rapidly decline, and then you're wondering why in your later years you're wheelchair bound or bed bound. And a lot of reasons that's part of the cause. Or you're having gait problems, walking problems. Mobility work can all support executive performance. That's what I've been doing in lieu of the gym, especially with my upper body. I've been doing a lot of mobility, strength training with my shoulders and upper body. And then I would do weights with the lower body. And I'm slowly getting back into the gym. So I don't want to re injure myself. So my re entry is slow. In the interim, I was doing hot works, which is you're working out in 125-degree infrared sauna. And when I say it's the cellular detox, the fact that you could do that every day because of the heat, it helps the muscles repair quicker. So you don't need those breaks in between, like when you regularly go to the gym because of muscle soreness and fatigue. So it's really fundamental. And then, of course, yoga itself activates the parasympathetic nervous system. So that's our calm down system. And it helps me relax. So doing that 4 times a week really keeps my nervous system regulated. Movement also interrupts attention residue and creates space for insight. Remember, I told you I did a cognitive reset walk before this live? That was part of the problem because I just had a emotional encounter, which was very distressing to me. And I knew that I needed to come on to this live, and I had things that I needed to do throughout the rest of the day that required my focus, and I didn't want to have the thoughts of that encounter swirling around in my head all day. So for me to be able to walk and to get that negative energy out clears that attention residue in my mind. And now it created space for insight. I revamped, actually what I was going to do was go into my private Zoom, but then I decided since this is the last live call, I'll just stream it live so everybody can see and hopefully encourage. If you don't have a community of leaders or like-minded people who are on in this journey for sustainable leadership and for a sustainable healthy lifestyle, the executive longevity community is where you want to be. Every day you'll find some type of insight, implementation tools. If you go in the featured section, you'll see the executive capacity audit, where you can audit yourself and then see where your challenges are so you can know what part or where you need to start first in order to build your strategic longevity plan. So here's a question that I want to ask. Where can I use movement as a performance and recovery tool during my day? And I just listed a bunch of them. But for a typical day for me, what I do is I get up in the morning, I have my morning routine, which is non negotiable: prayer, meditation, journal. Then I get ready for the day. Then I go outside, and for the first 10 minutes, I walk. I don't listen to podcasts, music, talk on the phone, nothing. I just commune with nature and God and get vitamin D on my skin. That's one way that you can institute movement into your day. Then I take breaks if I'm working on something and it's a 2 hour block. After an hour and 50 minutes, I stop, I'll stretch, I'll walk, I'll do a mobility exercise, especially for my upper body. That's helpful. I go into the bathroom every time I go to the bathroom because I drink about a gallon of water a day. I do squats, I do wall push ups, wall crawls. That's another way to institute movement into your day. And then I have an evening cognitive reset. If it's not raining, I walk, or I'll be in the house and I'll do some form of yoga or Pilates in the house. So those are ways that you can institute movement into your day, and you can spread them throughout the day. You can do them 10 minutes at a time. One thing about working out is cumulative. So if you don't do an hour in a row, it's not like you're not going to get the benefits. It's actually, research has shown it's actually better to spread it out throughout the day than to sit down all day and then to just get up for 1 hour a day to do some form of movement. Movement is one of the fastest ways to change your physiological and cognitive state. And for the final week in the lab, what we're wrapping up is we're adding neurology, and we're going to do an audit, and then we're going to ask ourselves the serious question. And this is a question I've been asking myself about every area of my life. If everything stays the way it is, what would my life look like in 6 months? Would it be better, worse, or the same? In a lot of instances, it's going to either be better or worse. That's just the truth. You don't even want to be stagnant because nothing that grow anything that doesn't grow, it dies. Think about water. Water is constantly moving. That's why they call it current. It's movement. When you see a body of water that's stagnant, usually like a pond, there's dead fish in there, dead frogs. It's dead, it's stagnant, there's no movement. So you always want to be moving, preferably in a positive direction. And if you're not moving in a positive direction and you're moving in a decline, you might want to pause and ask yourself why, and then decide what your pivot is. So we'll definitely be looking at that this week. And again, if you want support, you want more information, you just want a community that's on the same journey as you, join the Executive Longevity community. Neurology is where everything converges. Neurology is not a separate topic. I actually integrated it in everything in the lab, because when we're talking about our mind, our capacity, our cognitive load, our cognition, all of that is part of neurology. Cognitive resets, that's part of neurology. Regulating your nervous system, part of neurology. We have to realize that sleep affects memory, attention, emotional regulation, and impulse control. Insight reduces unconscious cognitive and emotional load. Growth builds adaptive neural patterns. So that's what I've been doing. In the brain, if you ever heard of neuroplasticity, the brain is like plastic. It's like putty. So you can change the directions. You don't have to, because this is the way Medea has always done it, and my mama has always done it, and I have to do it. That may have worked for Medea. That may have worked for your mama, but it's not working for you. And you can do a new trajectory. And the first time you do it, it's going to feel odd. It's going to feel weird. I know for me, I have been a diehard people pleaser. So when I started instituting boundaries, that thing felt weird to me. I felt like I was doing something wrong, because I never want to hurt anybody or do something to offend somebody. But I realized I was offending myself by not having boundaries in place. I was leaving myself unprotected. And it felt weird the first time saying no. Now, every time I say no, I'm saying yes to peace. I'm saying yes to clarity. I'm saying yes to myself. Nutrition influences neurotransmission and metabolic stability. Like I said, food is information for the mind. That's also neurology. That's also neuroscience. Our metabolic stability, how we operate on a cellular level, all of that is rooted in some type of science. Maybe not necessarily neuroscience, but we have nerves throughout the body, and the nerves, which is the neurotransmitters, the neural waves, that the neural pathways that they move on, that transmits to every part of our body. Movement supports cerebral blood flow, learning, mood, and neuroplasticity. Recovery determines whether the nervous system remains flexible or chronically defensive. And that is why, and let me just brief you on what a recovery infrastructure is. If you have never seen me live ever before in life, never seen any of my podcasts, not inside the executive longevity community, a recovery infrastructure is where you have the foundation of sleep, nutrition, movement, all into one, and how you institute it into your lifestyle. So you don't have to come up with this, oh, I got to be at the gym for 2 hours. Oh, I have to be on this strict restrictive diet. Sleep is not a reward because I've been overproductive. I've been having to retrain myself on that. I've even posted that yesterday, because normally when I have a day of joy, which yesterday was a full day of joy, I got to get with classmates and neighbors that I went to high school with that I hadn't seen in years. And, fellowship with them and have breakfast with them. And that was so cool to just hear how everybody is just advancing in their lives and growing in their lives. And then I went and spent the day with my mom. Her birthday was actually on Wednesday, but I took her out and made her feel like a princess for the day. And everywhere we went, strangers was just wishing her happy birthday and just soaking in that time with her. But that was the bulk of my day. So normally, because I did have other things to do, I have um, a financial situation right now that I have a lot of things that I need to take care of as far as that. I have schoolwork to do. I have content to create. So I would burn the midnight oil, not get any rest, and I laid down, which was supposed to be for a half hour nap, end up sleeping for 2 hours. And then I realized that I consistently was using rest as a reward instead of as recovery. So, and like I said, I was upset earlier. The old me would have just rant, rave, screamed when somebody says or does something that I don't like. I don't do that anymore. I figure out, I pause, I release that out of my body, and then I just speak to myself. Did this trigger a wound? Why did this trigger you? What did this interaction bring out of you? And what are you going to do going forward so that you can alleviate that? So, or you can handle that challenge better. Obviously, good nutrition. Your health is your wealth. So if you're dropping crap into your body, you're setting yourself up for chronic modifiable lifestyle diseases. And so when you have all of those things combined, that is your recovery infrastructure. And that's what helps you to be a sustainable leader in society. Your executive brain is the operating system behind every conversation, judgment, boundary, strategy, and decision. When the underlying biology is dysregulated, leadership becomes more reactive. When it is supported, leadership becomes clearer, steadier, and more intentional. And I know that if you follow certain people on the internet, everyone's talking about this now, this nervous system dysregulation, but there's so much truth in it. You cannot function with a dysregulated nervous system. The reason why I do the work that I do is because I help CEOs and senior leaders stabilize the physiology that drives judgment, performance, and execution. If your nervous system is dysregulated, you're metabolically unstable because your nutrition is off. You're chronically have chronic insomnia. You have poor decision quality. Oh, and your movement is not good. So your physical body is all starting to decline. Your decision quality is going to be poor. Your leadership is going to be poor. And not just how you lead in your job, in your business, and in your organization, but how you lead in your personal life. All of that is going to decline. The quality of your relationships at a whole is going to decline. So when your physiology and your biology is stable, then you'll see the gains, the increases in how you become more efficient and more productive, how your capacity expands. So I want to invite you to choose one action that you're going to use to start your strategic longevity plan. What is the challenge? What is your biggest challenge right now? Is it sleep? Do you even know? Are you even aware? Because if you're not even aware, that's the first place to start. You need to sit down. Am I sleeping 7 to 9 hours a night? How is my nutrition? Am I getting enough protein? Is my macros on target? If they're not, what is a macro? How do I stabilize that? Where in life or what stage of life am I in? Have I been to the doctor? Have I had a physical? Have I sat down and talked with my doctor about how can I optimize my health? Where's the insight? So, are you moving? Are you working out? All of that is key. Um, Growth. What challenge requires a healthier response? For me right now, it seems like all stages of my life are in influx. It seems like it's a big blow up right now. So I am stewarding a lot of areas in my life, and I'm pausing a lot, and I'm making the necessary pivots where they need to be made. Again, is it your nutrition? What habit will improve your daily stability? Is it maybe meal planning? Do you have decision fatigue around that? What are you going to cook? What are you going to eat? What are you going to prepare? Maybe come up with a system. For me, I meal prep every Sunday, and I'm like a 5-year old. I have my 5 or 6 favorite foods, and I just stick to that every day. I know how much protein I'm going to get in. I know how much fiber it's going to give me daily. I know how much water I need to drink. I don't have to think about it, so it reduces decision friction. And then activity, how will I consistently incorporate movement? Like I said, I just incorporated Seamly. First 10 minutes after my power hour in the morning, well, it's actually a power hour and a half, I go outside for a 10-minute walk. Um, I have a tracker on my phone because you really don't need to do a lot of heavy cardio if you're getting about 10,000 steps in a day. So I know at 9:30 I should have at least 2,100 steps in, 12:30 4,600 steps, 3:30 7,100 steps, 6:30 9,600 steps. So by the end of my day, I've hit almost 10,000 steps. If I don't have a certain amount of steps at a certain time, I will stop and do a cognitive reset. It's funny that we will highlight and promote bad habits at work, but not good ones. So if I was a smoker and said I need to go on a smoke break, nobody would bat an eye. But if I say I need to go outside for 10 minutes to go for a walk, everybody's up in alarm. So I just say I'm going for a smoke break and walk for 10 minutes. It regulates my nervous system. It helps with my movement. It helps with my cognition. I come back, I'm more focused, and I have more attention. And just a little tip, a lot of people, it's not just the nicotine that they're addicted to when they smoke. If you think about it, you're actually deep breathing. That big inhale, that long exhale, that's actually breath work. So if you could just do that without the nicotine attached, you'll be ahead of the game. And that's another way that you can also downregulate your nervous system. And then longevity, what system will help you sustain these changes? And only you can determine that. That's why it's called your strategic longevity plan. So ask yourself, what is currently creating the greatest drag on your executive capacity? Then what change will create the largest positive ripple effect? I know for me, it's sleep, and sleep is still a challenge. So instead of having anchor times, I had to have anchored routines, and that worked better for me. And you will always be tweaking this, and there will be seasons in your life where it's busier than others, and you will have to tweak it again. So just think about that. Ask yourself what you can realistically practice in the next 30 days. You don't have to do all of this at once. I've been working on this and still tweaking it intentionally, consistently for the last 4 to 5 months. So the change that made the largest positive ripple effect for me was when I purposefully protected my recovery infrastructure. It's non-negotiable. My morning routine, non-negotiable. My nighttime routine, non-negotiable. My cognitive resets, non-negotiable. And once I protected those, came up with an ironclad meal plan, meal prep situation, sleep got under control, movement was instituted, I can soar because I'm in a very busy season in my life. Like I said in a previous episode, the next 8 quarters of my life are on go mode. So I'm not going to be able to accomplish the things that I need to accomplish if I don't have my recovery infrastructure in place. How will you measure whether it's improving your energy, focus, resilience, or decisions? Every Sunday, I have what's called a personal KPI, and I look at that and I actually ask myself, I go back over my last 7 journal entries. That's where I come up with my Sunday reflections from. So it helps me to go back and look at, okay, How was my energy this week? Was it good or not? Why? Was it due to nutrition? Was it due to movement? Was it due to personal situation, financial situation, business? What was it that caused? Was it lack of sleep that caused change to my energy? What dysregulated my focus? What is making me more resilient? All these challenges right now are making me more resilient. What decisions do I need to make in order to affect change? What support, structure, or boundary will make it sustainable? And that was the biggest thing for me. Just instituting boundaries. Hey, boundary, boom. And that's what made it sustainable for me. And I don't deviate from that because the peace that I am now preserving, you can't take that back. There's no amount of money. Your strategic longevity plan is not a list of health goals, it is a leadership performance system. The objective is not perfection, it is building a biological foundation that allows you to think clearly, recover intentionally, and lead effectively for years to come. Longevity isn't simply about living longer, it's about leading better for longer. I thank you all for listening to me on this live in ending out this last week of the Executive Longevity Lab experience with me. If you're inside the community this week, I'm going to be focusing mostly on prompts and implementation tools that you can utilize to start your own strategic longevity plan. Continue to follow me for more information on executive longevity. Like I said, I have podcasts that are released every Sunday on your favorite podcast platform. You can follow me at Executive Longevity on LinkedIn and Substack. You can follow me at Ask Nurse Sherry on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. I thank you for joining me today. You have a blessed rest of your Sunday.